We've all seen lists showing off older games that are still worth a go today, or must-play titles. Maybe their stories are complex and deep, or the characters and worlds are memorable. The games in this video, however, are the opposite. They showcase janky controls, confusing mechanics, and strange design choices, which makes them games you don't need to play. Eternal Quest. I was severely misled by the blurb on the back of this box. A third-person adventure RPG with a wealth of magical items, dozens of weapons, 50 levels to conquer, and unique spells. First red flag. If the first minute of the game is just a wall of text, that makes no real sense and sounds like someone's trying to be smart and mysterious, probably overcompensating. Second red flag, here you go. Figure it out for yourself. No instructions, aside from the novel at the start. No controls, just try and survive. So it's a mystery dungeon type game. Find the ladder or stairs, and get as far down as you can, with enemies becoming more and more difficult with every stage. My first run was 13 seconds. My second run, I was surrounded by enemies on the first stage, taking me out in 9 seconds. I was honestly wondering if I'd get enough footage with my impressive run times, but I decided to soldier on. I got to an amazing floor 4, got new weapons and armor, and actually defeated the randomly generated enemies, giving me a little hope for this game. It turned out to be a complete fluke though, as my subsequent runs went back to being seconds long, and I lost all my weapons and armor and items. The soundtrack was amusingly over the top for the lack of action in the game, but it kept me going. Buy the game only for the music and crack out your glow sticks. Eve of Extinction. An action-adventure sci-fi game. We're thrown into the story of Josh Calloway, who's being transported by mysterious men in suits who have a special interest in a metal briefcase. A little background is told during the cutscene, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It is very dramatic though. Something happens.
What's happening?
We're losing altitude. 170 meters. 100.
And Josh is free from his captors. Somehow. Oh, and he's gotten hold of a laser sword. A woman magically appears? You can't fault this game for hanging around and wasting time telling a player what's actually going on. No prompts, no instructions. It just dropped me into a group of guys and told me to fight. Well, they did stand on Josh's head in the intro and spoke very sternly, so they must be the bad guys, right? The controls aren't too horrible. The combat is button mashy, which is always right up my street. You can change between a sword, a staff, and unarmed. And you level each weapon up by using them, or do combo attacks by switching weapons mid-strike, which I sometimes did by accident because I got caught up in the moment. They also throw in some quick time events to make sure you're still awake. A weird choice when explaining combat tutorials is cutting to a black screen, weapons spinning in the center, a voiceover,
The Legacy Sword is a deadly and well-balanced standard weapon.
and subtitles. There's info dumps, then there's this. They throw a player into combat with no explanation, then drag them back out to make sure they're paying attention for future upgrade instructions. The jumping and climbing mechanics are some I have never seen before, and are quite impressive in their unnecessary complexity. You can do a little bunny hop, but only while the rod is equipped. In order to grab a ledge, you have to switch to unarmed in midair. If you time it wrong, you just end up jumping up and down in front of a wall.
The action button also pulls you out.
Then they introduce Legacy Drive. So, a weapon overdrive that is super overpowered. You have to draw a pattern on the screen with the right stick, but it can be overly sensitive, making you have to try and try again.
Do it!
The rest of the game is pretty much fighting suits in different environments, switching weapons to level them up, then moving on to the next area. We end up in a subway, fighting more guys, and as a nice break, they inserted a QuickTime event to avoid a train if you fall onto the tracks. This was probably the best use of QTEs in any game. Overall, a strange Star Wars Matrix crossover with plenty of jank, confusion, and generic enemies to hit with a stick. Casper and the Ghostly Trio. If you've played your fair share of PS2 games, you might be familiar with Blast. If you haven't heard of them, count yourself lucky. They churn out buggy, janky, messy, and generally terrible games based on TV shows and movies. The menus are unwelcoming, and you're thrown into a fever dream with no instructions, controls, or objectives. Then I find this cute little ghost uses tank controls. At least they provide auto-lock aiming. Oh, it's a little random and jumpy. Excellent. So once I managed to work out how to move and attack, I guessed I had to find the golden keys, which turned out to open a crypt. What they didn't tell me was where the crypt was. Oh well, let's just carry on and hope something makes sense. The enemies are easy enough to defeat, but trying to face them was the bigger challenge. The big, weird floating orbs are checkpoints. Not that there was much to go on, just that they turned into arrows when I came near them. I worked my way through each area 3 times, trying to find the crypt. Then, once I found it, end of level. Here's a loading screen. They threw a curveball by changing what kind of level design came next, and I thought the initial side-scrolling was a preview, but then I got a game over. So I realised I had to race against the camera and do some strategic jumping. You would think as the second level this would be fairly easy, but then the jank kicks in. And I ended up falling off ledges, getting stuck under roofs, and just having issues getting Casper to move where I wanted him. They offered a skip level option, and after a dozen attempts, I took them up on it. Back to the open level design and hunting for keys, only this time we're underground and have a few new enemies. After getting knocked down a few times, There was a huge gap I had to somehow get across. So I tried holding the jump button, taking a run up, trying to hit jump at the last second, but nothing worked. So I checked the manual, and apparently L2 and X was the magic combo for jump and glide. But it didn't work, not the first time, and not the 20th time. Then, while stuck in my little loop, the enemies respawned, and of course, I didn't see them. To say this game was painful to play would be a massive understatement. 3 levels in, and most of my will to live had been drained. Also, the ghostly trio are right there on the box. They're mentioned in the pre-level block of text, but they haven't made an appearance yet. I was wondering maybe they end up being the last bosses, in a last-ditch attempt to feature them. But I wouldn't be able to tell you, as this gap was just too mighty for me to cross. Poor Casper, he didn't deserve this fate. So, there you go. 3 PS2 games you can play if you have nostalgia for them, or if you want unreasonable amounts of confusion and jank to fill your playtime. My opinion? Don't play them. Please, just don't. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit your favourite combination of buttons down below.